The Blast from Our Past Network.
Hey everyone, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com, or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us.
Welcome to our Patreon exclusive interview series for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Tonight's interview is with the star of Manhunter, The Monster Squad, and RoboCop 2, actor Tom Noonan. Tom Noonan, thank you so much for being on Podcasting After Dark.
Sure, glad to be here.
It's really a pleasure. I gotta tell you, personally, your body of work has been such a huge part of my life and throughout the years, and it's really truly an honor to have you on the show to discuss everything.
Sure.
Yeah, and Corey and I, before we set this whole thing up, Corey's like, well, we're gonna talk about RoboCop 2, right? I said,
Yeah, I love that movie so much, as well as Monster Squad and Manhunter. And just like Zach said, you know, you've been a part of my life pretty much my entire life. So this is a huge honor, and thank you very, very much for doing this with us.
yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 42.
How old are you?
I'm 44, so
Okay.
so you know we're
Yeah.
a little bit younger than you, but you know, the generation of now we're
Yeah.
part of the retro generation, I guess. I personally I've been a voice actor for the past few years, and I was taking an acting class recently before the pandemic, and one of the actors in the class said, I'm working on a period piece right now. And I said, oh, what time period? The 1980s. I said, oh, we're calling that a period piece now? I thought that. But speaking
When
of,
I was 40, I had wisdom teeth that had to be taken out under great strain because they were really embedded in my jaw. So they did the procedure, and then they gave me a little bottle of pills to take if the pain got bad. And I decided I'd drive to my house upstate. So I drove a couple hours and got there, and then took a couple of these pills. I never done drugs really. It was, I can't remember what it was, but it brought on this amazing emotional response that I just lay on the floor of my house thinking what it was like to be 40, and that I'd never done what I could have done with my life, and that Beethoven was 38 when he died.
oh,
I mean,
wow.
just all these things coming up, and wept and whatever the word is, and came back to the city sort of renewed, and that's what led to a lot of this stuff that I've done, that I made What Happened Was, and then a lot of other stuff came from that. But being 40, the age you're at is really, I think, a really pivotal point in most people's lives.
Oh, that's really interesting that you, first of all, that whatever, I'm not good with pain pills because they cause me to get really nauseous, but I will say that if I had some sort of visceral trip like that, and Corey can speak more accurately to that sort of experience, I Well, both Corey and I being in our 40s and also in this stage of our lives, doing truly what we love, the passion of
Yeah.
following our bliss. Joseph Campbell is a hero of mine, and really
Huh.
tapping
Yeah.
into what is not just bringing a quality of content out into the world, but also a quality inward as well, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, I'm just, and
Sure.
your
I
wisdom
mean, I
teeth.
wasn't recommending taking drugs either, so
No, of course not.
I was just saying
Well, going back
something
really,
about
really
being
quick,
40.
how are you doing? How are you doing amidst all of the craziness in the world?
Not very well. Um, I I don't know what it is about the whole thing, but I mean, I know what it is, but I seem to be more affected than a lot of people around me, and I have difficulty dealing with it, and it causes a lot of anxiety for me and a lot of physical difficulties. Like I get weird symptoms of awful stuff that luckily goes away after a while, but I have, it's been a drag, and I, oh, geez, there's so much to talk about this, but I came upstate to my house because, my kids decided they wanted to be in the city and they wanted me to be out of the city because they thought it'd be more dangerous because I'm 70. So I came up here, and, it's been interesting being away from the city during all this and being away from everything. But I should just let it go with that.
Yeah, my perspective is kind of similar. I was living in LA, and my wife and I just moved to Oregon about pretty much a year ago, but we had very little time to to explore because like right when we got here, everything kind of shut down. But it's definitely a different perspective being away from the city and kind of like out in the country, and it's still happening, but it's different. It's a lot different than being really in the midst of things.
What town in Oregon are you?
I'm up in Eugene, about an hour and a half outside of Portland.
Well, you don't know about Junction City? Are you familiar with the town?
Yes, we're actually probably like 15 minutes away from Junction City.
Because when I dropped out of college and wrote a letter to my draft board saying to try to find me, that's where I moved. I moved to this commune that was there.
Oh, really?
That was populated by people from the Living. They were populated by people from the Living Theater. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Living Theater.
Yeah.
It's a theater group. It's a famous theater group from New York City in the mid-'60s. Julian Beck, who we know from movies, and Judith Malina, his wife. But they're really crazy. But the people who were too crazy to be in the Living Theater moved to Oregon and started this commune. And it was quite insane to leave, Yale, and then 3 months later you're living in this commune. And,
wow.
Yeah.
How long did you stay in Junction City for?
I want to say like 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
One night they came to me and said, you got to decide what, you haven't really. The people in the commune were getting uptight with me because I wasn't really established there. I didn't say this is where I want to spend the rest of my life. Which they all thought they would do, and so they asked me what my plans were, and I said, let me think about it tonight. In the morning we can talk. And as soon as everybody went to sleep, I packed my bags and took off.
Oh, wow.
Walked out to the highway and hitchhiked out to the river. Out to the ocean, which I loved. Yeah.
Yeah, Oregon's definitely a unique place. As an East Coaster who grew up in Maryland outside of DC and then lived in LA for 13 years and now lives up here. Oregon has its definitely unique qualities to it. It's a beautiful place and I absolutely love it. And the ocean here is amazing. The coast.
I love.
When's the last?
It's crazy. It's great.
When's the last time you were back on this coast?
I mean the whole West Coast or just that little area?
Yeah, that little area, or just yeah.
Shit. I haven't been in Oregon. I'm trying to remember. I must have done something there. I know I did a movie there, but I can't remember what it is. Yeah.
It's been a while.
What's crazy though is I hitchhiked to the coast and started hitchhiking south toward LA on I guess 5 is 5
Yeah.
out near the coast, or is
Yep.
it
Yeah.
101?
Or the 101. Yeah.
And this van picked me up early that morning after I'd left that commune, and it was this panel van that had it was like it didn't have windows. It was like this delivery place. I got in and I sat on the engine, which is between the two front seats,
Mhm.
the front, and there's a bunch of guys in the back. Just I can hear them talking a little, and I'm talking to the two guys who were driving the van, and then in the middle of some sentence, I hear this voice from the back come and say, "Is that Tommy Noonan?" And I turned around, and this kid that I'd gone to grammar school with in most of high school,
No
who I
way.
really didn't like back then. And so I spent the next 6 months with this guy. It was the most amazing sort of coincidental experience, of which I have a lot. I've had a lot in my life, but
That's
yeah,
crazy.
that was
That's
yeah.
wild.
Can I say his name? I guess.
Sure, if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so
His name was Robert Patton, and we were very, very, very competitive in grammar school and in high school. We both wanted to go to this school, and the only way we were going to get in is if we won the scholarship. And I think I won, but then my parents wouldn't let me go because my brother had gone to that school, and they felt anybody who went to that school would turn out like my brother, which they would rather have not happen.
Oh.
So I ended up not going to that school, and then he ended up going because he was the next person in line for the scholarship. I may
Wow.
be inaccurate about that, and if I am, Bobby, I'm sorry. But during that time, man, I spent 2 or 3 years just hitchhiking. There was back then. There's a whole culture of life in America that was hitchhiking.
Yeah.
And you'd hitchhike for a while, and then you'd meet a group of guys who are hitchhiking, and then you'd sort of intermingle, and you'd leave, and there'd be a new group with you, and some of the old guys would go with the old group. And I used to for a while I lived in this flop house of sorts in Berkeley, California, where I think you had to be in by 9 and out by 5 or 6 in the morning, and you slept in this cage. A series of cages in the room that had beds and this anchored chain link fence holding you in, and you'd meet these people who'd been doing it a lot longer than I had, been doing it for years, and I thought, Jesus Christ, I don't want to end up like these guys.
No.
But I sort of did. I about 6 months after I got to the West Coast, my draft board sent me a letter saying that they had wanted me to be in there. They wanted me to appear for a physical, and I wrote them back another nasty letter saying, fuck you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to Canada because it's a moral war.
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, not even months, I get a letter from the draft board that they had no longer interested in inducting me because Nixon had dropped bombs on Cambodia, and the Congress had cut off funds to the Department of War or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was off. I went back to the end of the line. There was a lottery back then where they put people, were inducted based on a series of numbers.
Maybe your letter actually helped too. They're like, we don't want this guy.
I don't know. I think they were pretty vindictive, some of these people, and that's long stories. I don't want to get into all that.
No,
But,
it's fascinating. I'm fascinated because we could go on and on about specific movies that you've done and what we love about those movies, but what I'm intrigued with as well as Corey is just this idea of like what gets us to where we are today. And I know you said you've had a series of coincidences in your life. I have a acting teacher named Richard Horowitz who says that he doesn't believe he says there are no coincidences in his opinion. And I've tried to adopt that over the years since I've taken his classes. And this idea that, what gets you to where you are today, good and bad and everything in between. I'm fascinated with this. You get in this, I want to go back to you being in this van with your former classmate, Bobby, and you had a relationship with him for quite some time after that then?
Like 6 months, yeah.
Wow.
We traveled together.
Did
We moved
he?
we ended up in Santa Cruz is where we ended up,
Oh yeah, I
in the
used to
hills
hike
above Santa Cruz.
Big Basin to the Sea. It's a very famous trail up there,
Oh
which is
yeah.
really nice. So, being a Bay Area guy myself,
I went swimming every day when I lived there. I would swim
oh,
all winter long.
I could understand
Even the
why.
surfers thought I was crazy. Yeah.
So, how did you get? So, is this the long journey that got you into acting? I mean, when did you start? Were you? How did you get involved with acting?
I was living in Boston and I was a guitar player and I wanted to be like the fastest guitar player ever lived, which didn't really happen. But one day I decided I was going to move to New York. So I moved to New York, and I was living with my brother, who was a playwright, and he had a play on that required some incidental music. So he came to me and said, "Can you write incidental music?" And I said, "Yeah." I had no idea like how to write that kind of stuff. Um,
Fake it till you
and so
make it.
I started writing music for. Yeah, I kept writing pieces for this play, and ended up like I wrote like 8 things, it was really fun. Um, but I was around actors a lot, and and they were pretty well known, a couple of them, and very accomplished. And I started thinking, well, gee, I could do that. That doesn't seem like it's that difficult to do what they're doing. Um, So I asked a guy in the cast, I said, how do you get a job doing how do you get a job acting? And they said, well, you get this paper called Backstage,
Hmm.
and it has auditions in it that you can go in. And if you go on non-union ones, union ones are hard to get in on.
Yeah.
But if you go to the non-union ones, you could probably get a gig. So I said, well, is there anything else I need to know? And he said, well, you have to have a monologue. And I said, what's a monologue? And he said, well, you have to speech, in the play where people talk for a while without anybody talking. It's just you talking. So I thought, shit, how do you find monologue? He said, you have to read plays. I said, well, okay. So I thought, I'm not going to read plays. It's not really worth my time. So I would decide I would write I'd write these little plays that were really a 90-second play or a 2-minute play or a 4-minute play. And I would use those when I went to audition, and I would tell them that was a monologue from a play I'd never seen, never didn't exist. But they were too embarrassed to ask me.
It's fantastic.
What the play was. And 2 weeks after I started doing that, I got a lead in a play. It was a terrible play in a crazy circumstance, but I was in a play. And I was on stage every night, and I had never been in a play.
Wow.
And the next job I got was this play called Buried Child by Sam Shepard that was a world premiere, or I think New York premiere. And my friends all said that hung out with me, said, you should go in, it's perfect for this part in the play. And I said, yeah, they're never going to hire me. I've done one stupid, little play, and I have no reputation. I don't know what I'm doing. They said, go anyway. So they finally talked me into doing it. I went in, and there's a guy named Robert Woodruff, who's the director, who just thought I was that I was incredibly funny. He knew that he said to me later, he said, I knew you had no idea what you were doing, that you had never acted. Because I had this fake bio with, a resume with all this. But I got the job, and I was in this play that won the Pulitzer Prize. I ran for a year, and by the time the run was over, I was doing movies.
Wow.
So less than a year after I started acting, yeah, it was crazy. I mean, I think I did 4 or 5 little parts, but I was on my way, sort of. It felt like I'd found what I always wanted to do, and it was a weird sort of way that it happened.
And had you
But I was
abandoned?
very, very fortunate, like having the guitar.
Yeah, I was going to say, had you abandoned playing guitar at that point?
What happened is, after I talked to these guys in this play and figured out how you get a job acting, I went to my guitar and I took it out of its case and I held it and I said, I love you, and it's been really great hanging and do all this music we did together, and I'm going to put you in the case now and close it. I'm never going to open it again. I have to let go.
Wow.
And then
Wow.
it makes me sad when I think of the story.
That's a
and I'd
very
never
strong.
played it again.
Wow.
That's a very strong, energetic commitment right
Yeah.
there. That's amazing.
Yeah. So then I think that, yeah, and I was also older than most of the people I auditioned with. I was probably 27 or 8 at that time,
Hmm.
and I'd never acted ever at all, and not even in grammar school. I hated plays. um, but you know, it did it like letting, sort of jumping off from what I was doing, musically, and going to something I had no idea about it was sort of exciting but crazy. But I used to go to auditions all the time, and I come in and sit down in this room, and I would just think to myself, I don't want to end up like these sad motherfuckers.
Mm.
It seemed like actors were so, wanting to please, and and giving them what they thought they wanted, and I thought it was just crazy. And I'm very, very lucky that I ended up working with directors that sort of felt the same way, and it really encouraged me to do things the way I wanted to do them, and not the way that anybody else thought I should do them,
Yeah, I
like the
mean,
producers.
I was going to say early on, working with somebody like John Cassavetes, who it was, I know you had a small role in Gloria, but nevertheless, that must have been a great opportunity.
Yeah, what happened is my acting teacher said they're looking for thugs to be in this play, in this movie, and they were looking for really. So I said, and they said, it's time you should go in. So I go in, and they're in this room, and there's this guy Lou LaRusso, I think it's Lou LaRusso, but I can't remember his name. The casting guy said, now we're going to go in there, we're going to see Mr. Cassavetes. Do not look at him, do not talk to him, do not move toward him, just walk in, stand there, and then we're going to turn around and walk back out. Everybody with me on this? And of course they
Jesus.
said, yeah. The door opened to the door opened to the casting room, and I ran. I cut ahead of everybody, ran across the room, grabbed Cassavetes and said, "You gotta put me in your movie. I want to work with you. I'm doing this play right now called Buried Child. You gotta come see it." Meanwhile, the casting guy is like, he got his arm, he's trying to drag me out of the room. And I got a call on my service, like 10 minutes after I left their office, saying that he had offered the job to me.
Wow.
It was a tiny job. And I said, I'll do it, but I'm going to put this in the contract that unless you come to my play, I'm not going to do it. So John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins and Peter Falk and all these guys, they all come to see Buried Child,
No way.
in this thing that, yeah, they came, and then afterwards they took me and this person who I was hanging out with at the time, to this restaurant in the neighborhood there where it was Sheridan Square, downtown Manhattan.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's after about a couple weeks on that job, he came to me when Cassavetes came to me and said, "You don't want to be here, do you?" And I said, "Well, you're not really. I mean, it's not so interesting. I wanted to get to know you, but I don't want to do this movie." He said, "Yeah, I understand. You just don't come tomorrow. It's okay. I'll get somebody else." And I said, "Okay." But then I had a relationship with him by then, and now
Yeah.
when I wrote scripts, I would send him scripts and call him, talk to him on the phone, and I spent a lot of time with him the next couple of years before he died.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. First of all,
Yeah.
had you
It
always?
was.
I mean, yeah, you started out telling us a story about making your way out to Oregon, and have you always been
Yeah.
that kind of like, I know what I want, this is how I feel, and I'm going to tell you how I feel? Have you always been that kind of person?
I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't put it that way. I
Okay.
mean, I've always been pretty quiet and not like pushy, but I just sort of I knew what I liked, and I knew what felt good,
Okay.
and I thought feeling good is really important.
Yeah.
Feeling joy in what you do. If without that, what's the point of doing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I want to jump a little bit ahead if that's okay, but just this idea that
Sure.
you started out like from in a sense like a bullet from a gun, just like going out, and next thing you know, you're just doing it, and which is inspiring. It's really inspiring. I don't care if it's late 70s, early 80s, or now. that idea of not wanting to be miserable and wanting to find the joy is very inspiring and very much appreciated that you
Yeah.
shared that story with us. So thank you. Yeah, I would say, for
Yeah.
me personally, I know you working with Michael Mann. Michael Mann is one of my favorite directors of all time. And I think when you did Manhunter, it really captivated me on many levels. I've always been a fan of, like kind of French New Wave and colors and just the music and images. And your presence on screen was very fascinating to me because I don't mean this in the way it sounds, but I had a stepfather around the same time who very much looked like you. And then I see Manhunter, and
Oh,
it was kind of my relationship with him was not, it wasn't bad, but it was just different, and I didn't really connect with him in the way that he always seemed kind of detached to me.
yeah.
And so your character in Manhunter, Francis Dollarhyde, um, I don't know, like in a weird way, I related to the disconnect that you had from society. So
Uh-huh.
it was very fascinating to me, even as a kid at the time when I saw it, and terrifying too, because I'm like, is that what my stepdad's going to turn into? He didn't. Um, so can you talk a little bit about
How
Manhunter?
old were you at this time?
I was 10 at the time, so
Sure.
um,
10. I'm 10.
yeah.
You watched an Manhunter when you were 10. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, so
Um,
that's the whole point of our podcast, by the way, is movies. Initially, when Corey and I were brainstorming our podcast, Corey was like, these are movies that we weren't allowed to see as kids, right? For whatever reason,
uh-huh.
and he and I both being
Yeah.
latchkey kids in front of the TV for a lot, hours on end, watching stuff that maybe wasn't appropriate at the time.
Yeah.
So, anyways, takes me to Manhunter, and I go, okay, this was a life-changing film for me at the time, still is. Um,
Yeah.
your experience on that was obviously pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah. What happened is, I mean, I told this story a lot, so I'll try to get through it really quickly. He called me in for an appointment. I got called to read for Francis Dollarhyde, and I think the appointment was for like 10:30 to meet him at the studio up in Midtown. So I went there. I got there early, and I sat down, and I was feeling sort of okay. And it's 10:30, and then it was 11, then it was 11:30, then it was 12, and all these guys from Steppenwolf, the theater company, were coming in and reading, and all going in ahead of me, even though I had the appointment. And I was not real thrilled with this, um, and I got pretty pissed off. And then I thought, fuck it, I'm going to go in there. So they called me. I came into this room, and I don't know if you know much about Michael. Michael has a real presence. He's sort of like Beethoven looking guy. And you don't talk back. I mean, I learned this over time that you don't argue with him or talk back to him. I walked into the room and I said, I'm reading and then I'm leaving. Let's go.
Wow.
And he said, okay, where's the script? And they had me read this woman who was, she had been a casting assistant, but now she was a casting director, a casting person. And I was going to read with her. And for some reason, somehow, without doing very much and not doing anything that extravagant, I sort of scared the shit out of her. And as I felt myself scaring the shit out of her, I could feel Michael drifting around in the room, watching what I was doing. And I could tell he was really excited, and it's a great feeling when someone really loves what you're doing as an actor. It's just I can't explain it. It's just great.
Yeah.
And so when I finished the reading, and I started to get up and get my stuff, and he said, I just want to ask you one question. I said, I'm not talking to you. I told you I was going to come in, I was going to read, and then I'm leaving, and I'm leaving. And I leave, and I'm walking away, thinking, well, I blew that one. And my agent calls me and said, what happened? And I said, what do you mean what happened? He said, well, he wants to meet you immediately. He wants you to come there now. I said, maybe tomorrow. He said, what do you mean maybe tomorrow? He said, you got to go now. And I said, well, okay. In a little while, I'll go there. So I go back to the the audition place, and they rushed me in right away. Very different than the first time. And
I bet.
he starts talking about what he saw in me doing that, and he said, well, how do you think you do that, whatever it was you do? And I said, scared people are very scary, and I'm a very scared person.
Hmm.
And he said, that's
Wow.
it. I said, yeah. And I said, and then he said, don't forget that. And then they hired me. And even though I turned it down a couple times, I was crazy. I'd done one or two little tiny parts. I was nobody, and this is sort of a big deal.
Yeah.
And I asked for more money than they wanted to give, and they asked all this stuff, and I ended up getting almost everything I wanted, and it made it really, really great. And Michael sort of, I don't know, I rarely had a conversation with the man. I spent a lot of time with him, but he used to come into my camper and just sit in the dark with me while they were setting up the lights, which would sometimes go on for hours. We'd just sit there, and that was no. He rarely ever said anything to me about anything I was doing. He would once in a while, when I looked like I was struggling, he'd come over and he'd say, "Don't forget your audition." I'd say, "Okay."
Wow.
But he was very cool because he was not cool sometimes with people. He could be really brusque and cruel and difficult, and he never was that way with me, but he was that way with people around me, and it was sort of illuminating.
Intruder entered through kitchen sliding door.
Nationwide victims.
Yeah, this is Will Graham of the FBI.
One killer.
This is what the subject's teeth look like.
Have you ever seen blood on the moonlight well?
William, you're gonna make yourself sick or get yourself killed.
Multiple trails.
Just you and me now, sport.
One hunter.
I'm gonna find you, damn it.
FBI agent Will Graham. Manhunter.
Well, it sounds like he really connected with you and your character, or he really. And I'm speculating, obviously not being. We're not the ones that were there, but what a trip that must have been for you, as well, coming into this feeling like, I haven't really done a whole lot, and then being treated in such a way of like, really just. Gently molded like this. I don't know. It's very fascinating to me. Did you, in your relationship with him, obviously, is that how you ended up getting the part in Heat? Was that because of your relationship with him, or was that just happenstance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he knew what I could do.
Yeah.
He knew what I could do, and he liked me, and I knew De Niro a little bit, but not much, not enough to have any effect on my getting the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Heat is one of those.
Yeah, that was fun. It was very positive and very different than it was on the set of Manhunter. Much more relaxed, and working with De Niro was really. He's just great to work with. He's one of the great. I don't know, he's just an amazing guy to be around, and sort of his supporting people. Like, he would just keep saying, keep going, keep saying crazy. Keep saying more stuff, talk more about,
Oh, really? That's
and
cool.
I thought, gee, you can't do that with Michael Mann. You can't just suddenly change stuff. He said, hey, don't worry about it. Just make up some shit. So
wow.
It's a short scene. It's not much, but it came a lot through my hanging out with De Niro and him, I don't know what, liking what I was doing or having fun doing it with me.
That was always a trip to me to see actors or people I admired on screen, and then see them again later on in another role, and as a young viewer, and recognizing, oh, wait a minute, that's him from blah 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 blah, and really getting excited about that. And when you came on in Heat as Kelso, and you're right, it's a small scene, but it's still very impactful in my mind, and stands out to me because it
Thank you.
just, yeah, you're welcome. I feel like so many moments in that film feel that way. Like this may be a small scene, but it is so critical to the pacing and the movement and the progression of this story. And obviously, you being in it was another great moment for me.
Got a printout here of the cash flow of the bank for the past 2 months.
How do you get this information?
Just comes to you. This stuff just flies through the air. They send this information out. I mean, it's just beamed out all over the fucking place. You all have to do is know how to grab it. See, I know how to grab it.
I just want to go back a little bit because I know
Sure.
in a couple weeks there's a documentary called Wolfman's Got Nards coming out from Andre Gower, and
Really?
yeah, so it's more of a.
And I'm not in it?
Well, I was going to ask you about that. I think it's more of a personal recollection of the film, of his experience on it. I mean, you're pivotal as Frankenstein in that movie, and obviously, and I mean, so many questions about that film. Just the idea of, being under that makeup for probably an obscene amount of time, I would assume, right?
Yeah, a lot of time, yeah.
Was that film challenging to work with a bunch of little kids?
No, not particularly. I mean, I just sort of latched on to what's the name, the makeup guy,
Stan Winston. Yeah.
Stan Winston. I love Stan. Stan was just this crazy, great, amazing person, and so good at what he does. He was a difficult guy, and not somebody who's very friendly and would do a lot of sort of cruel and awful things to people, but he was just. I didn't really think about the kids. I just thought that I didn't want them to see me ever. A lot of them didn't know. Like I would show up on location and walk through the set, and then nobody knew that I was Frankenstein. I mean, none of the, and I made sure the adults didn't tell the kids, so they never knew that I was just this guy.
Oh wow.
And I wanted to make sure they stayed scared of me to a degree during the whole thing, to make the thing make sense. And that would have been hard to do if I was chummy with them.
Clearly, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had a good time doing that job, and but the movie didn't come out for a while. I don't know. I was busy and doing stuff. I didn't see it when it first came out, and so about 25 years later, I went to this convention where you sign autographs and get money, which is sort of a crazy thing, and they had a screening of the movie, and I brought my kids with me, and I thought, well, I sort of remember the movie, but I don't remember much about it because I also don't read scripts when I get a job. I only read my own lines, and it's one of those guys. So it was sort of great to see it. It was such a good movie, and it was so different than my memory of making it, and it was really fun.
You know who to call when you have ghosts, but who do you call when you have monsters?
We're the Monster Squad.
What's a squad? It's like Miami Vice, I think.
They're young and inexperienced.
Naughty virgin.
They're a bit disorganized.
Monsters are not real.
We don't know that, sir.
2,000-year-old dead guys do not get up and walk away by themselves.
But when strange things start happening in town...
There's a monster in my closet.
Ooh, look at that big, scary monster.
What's happening? You wait until the werewolf.
Silver bullet?
They're the only ones ready to do battle.
Something's out there that's killing people. And if it's monsters, nobody's gonna do a thing about it but us.
By midnight,
You guys!
they won't seem so young anymore. The Monster Squad.
Wolfman's got me.
I was gonna jump a little bit into your directing before we talk about what happened. Was you directed a couple episodes of the television show Monsters, which both Corey and I are huge fans of. How did that all come about?
Yeah.
Or not?
I wrote this. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to direct and learn more about the camera and editing and stuff. And so I acted in their second or third show of the first season of Tales from the Dark Side.
Yes.
I did this thing with Danny DeVito. So I sort of knew the guys on the set after that, who, Richard, or what is it? Fuck, I can't remember their names. But I started sending them scripts, because at that point it turned into Monsters.
Yeah.
And I would write them a script a week for like months, and pretty good stuff compared to what they were showing. Generally, they never wanted to do anything I wanted to do. One day, Bob Balaban had also worked at Monsters, and he was in the midst of trying to get extracted. He didn't want to do this job, this script that they had given him, and they said, write something for me. So I started writing stuff for Bob Balaban, and finally Bob got approved the script, and I said, well, this is great. And he said, yeah. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop out of being the director too, and you can be the director now. And I said, that's never going to work, but it worked. He said he couldn't do it. Told him I don't know what he told them, and they said, use Tom, because he wrote the script and it's really good, and I know that he really wants to do this, and he's really worked at learning, which was true. So I got the job through Bob, and it was hard. There was so little time for actual acting.
Yeah.
All they wanted to do is they wanted to have these great sight gags. They wanted to have great effects. And that was very, very difficult to work under, that sort of strain of having to not have the money to do the effects right, and then not being able to work on the substance of the scripts because they didn't have time after they spent all these reshoots of effect. I don't know. But,
Was this was for The Bargain, right?
Those guys are... The Bargain is the first thing I was in with Danny.
Okay. Oh, that's right.
I think, and then the second...
Malcolm?
You're right. It is The Bargain. It's Kim Greist, yeah.
Yeah, from Manhunter.
Kim Greist is in it. From Manhunter, yeah.
But you guys didn't
and
interact.
The second one, I forgot, what's this?
The Malcolm, right?
Sorry, what?
The other one was Malcolm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's a script I wrote about. It's about my father, because my father was a jazz musician who sort of quit playing to be with my mother.
Wow.
It was always a hard thing for me. That was sort of what I wrote about.
That sounds like a very
that was
a very heartfelt inspiration for that story. Did the story turn out the way you sort of wanted it to? I mean, I know what you just said about the quality of the Monster show, but yeah. Yeah.
It was hard to do stuff, past a certain point. But I did the best I could do, and Ed Lauder was in it.
Yeah,
and
I love Ed Lauder.
He wouldn't do it for the amount of money they were offering, so I paid him on the side money.
Really?
Yeah, I just remember that. I haven't thought of that. I haven't thought of this in 50 years.
Oh, it's nice. It's nice to bring up something that you haven't talked about for a while. So.
I've never. I think I ever have.
What was there a reason you wanted him specifically? Did he remind you of your dad a little bit?
He reminded and looked like my father a little bit. He was also in Hitchcock movies. Because also who's in Malcolm is, what's his name?
Farley Granger.
Strangers on a Train.
Yeah,
Farley Granger's also in it.
Yep.
And he was, he did two Hitchcock movies.
That's right.
I want everybody in the cast to be in Hitchcock movies.
Well, I mean, come on, you're good. You're getting A+ quality actors. So, in my opinion,
Yeah.
So
they're pretty good. I mean, Ed was good to work with, and Farley was like on Mars a little. Great.
Well, at that point too, yeah, because this was in like 1990, which it's a little far removed from Strangers on a Train, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this led into.
Sorry about that. Did you hear that?
No, we didn't hear anything.
No, you're fine.
This led into What Happened
Oh,
Was,
okay,
right?
good.
And What Happened Was is, I would say that's probably pretty near and dear to your heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had, God, I can tell this story really quick. What happened is I was on RoboCop 2, and I started twitching when I was acting, and it made it so that it was difficult to do takes because it wasn't a twitch that you thought you could see, but you could really see it.
Like a
So I had to
nervous
hold my face,
twitch. Yeah.
and it was a muscular thing, and my cheek was just jumping. And so I sat down and thought, like, what is the world, and what's my body trying to tell me? And it came back and said that you shouldn't be doing these stupid movies. So I called up my agent and said, I'm going to take like a year off, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to like maybe write a little. So that was at the end of the summer of 1990, probably. I'd just come back from Sundance, the workshop stuff, which I'd done a lot of.
Yeah.
And I ended up, I had a date, June 12th, as an opening date at a play that I wanted to write, having no idea what the play was about. And I wrote play after play, and they all sucked, until finally that play came to me, and I wrote it in like 2 days. And it I don't know, I just felt a real connection to this stuff that was in that script, and you know, I don't know, and we did it as a play, which was great for me too. We did a 5-week run at my theater. I have a theater on East 4th Street in Manhattan, where I've done a lot of the stuff I've done, and so you know, it was I don't know how to. I mean, it's hard to describe it quickly. The thing though, they are some companies now remastering the movie.
Yes.
We retimed the picture, and we've done a lot of sound work. And I think in the next 6 months they're going to release it theatrically.
Oh, wow.
I don't think there are movie theaters around anymore, but
yeah,
they're going to do that, and then try to have another run at video. So I've been working on that a lot the last couple of months.
Oh, that's exciting.
I mean, it's hard to describe how important. I mean, how much that movie changed my life, and you know, both artistically and commercially, and I don't know, it was meant a lot to me.
Well,
I wish I had done more, and I'm very sort of disappointed that I haven't. But
it's pretty.
Do your best.
I really appreciate you sharing that story about saying, you know, I need to get away from this and kind of reevaluate. It is interesting physically what your body tells you and gives you a signal internally what something's going on, and you've got to change it up. And I'm glad you listened to it, because what came out of that has been, in my opinion, a lot of quality ever since. You know, it's.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's exciting to know that that your film is going to get a new set of eyes on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and also led to me. That's how I met Charlie Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he had seen my movie back in, I think, '95. He had seen it at some small little venue in Minnesota, and he wrote me an email, which I eventually was able to find. He wrote this email saying that, you know, my movie inspired him, and now he knew that he could make movies.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's been very, very supportive of me, and you know, using me a lot as an actor in his movies, and just generally just being a very good friend, and you know, sort of cool guy to hang out with.
That's quite a compliment coming from him, because he's such an accomplished you know, artist.
Yeah.
That's really, really
cool.
That
was a good period. That's when I met Louis C.K. and worked with him a bunch, and became close with him to a degree, I guess.
Yeah. And then you were on the show Louis as well, and I mean, you've been all over the place. It's really I've always felt too that I know Corey had brought up RoboCop 2, and I apologize again if if that obviously brought out the catalyst for change. But your range has been so broad,
But I did like, but I did really enjoy doing that movie, and I really, Erwin Kershner is just a great person and talented guy who didn't get the treatment he should. He was really badly treated by the producers of that movie. But it wasn't anybody in it or anything. But it just wasn't. That wasn't the kind of thing I should have been doing.
Yeah, because I mean, I know Corey, you're obviously a big fan, and it's a really good sequel in my opinion too. It doesn't get the praise that I think it deserves, but yeah, obviously wasn't the right avenue where you were going, and where you did go, and what you are doing is fantastic, and I want to thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, but like I said earlier at the beginning, I mean, I love RoboCop 2, and but it's amazing, and thank you, and Monster Squad is such a near and dear to my heart, as well as Manhunter. I mean, Zach's kind of said more, but Manhunter was also near and dear to my heart. I saw it probably at an age that I probably shouldn't have as well, but like I said, your characters, I've always enjoyed your characters, and like with Kane and RoboCop 2, it's still awesome. I love having that character in my life, and such a fun character to sort of watch.
What was also nice is that Last Action Hero, the money that I made from acting in that is what paid for What Happened Was.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
They were really cool about they would let me go back to New York and work on the movie while we were shooting, and guaranteeing me weeks that I could be free to, get a crew together. So that was a very helpful production for me.
That's really nice to hear. I had interviewed Hart Bachner, and he kind of had said the same thing, that he would do some of these films sometimes that allowed him the opportunity to make his own movies, and where he found, it was a good trade-off in his opinion to be able to do that, because it afforded him the opportunity to make a movie that he really cared about. And like I said earlier, it's nice that What Happened Was is going to get a new lease on life as well. That'll be, and that's going to come out next year, you said?
I don't know. I mean, we're halfway through the process of sort of, fixing it up. So I would feel like that. Like, I mean, it depends a lot on the pandemic and whether theaters are open, and I'm also losing. I'm in the danger of losing my theater right now.
Oh no!
Because we're not allowed to use the building really that we have, and we had to give back all the money to people who had booked space there last year, and so we're sort of bankrupt. And it's very, very likely I'll lose the building. Which is
sorry to hear that.
After 37 years. Yeah, we'll see.
Hopefully, hopefully that's not the case, but I was going to tell you really quickly though, a good friend of mine actually used.
Sure.
I don't know exactly what piece, but when he started out acting, he used a piece from What Happened Was in an acting class. So it was in a roundabout way. I told him I was interviewing you, and he's like, "Oh, well, I actually used a piece from What Happened Was," and I'm like, "Oh, that's I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me?" So and he goes, "I just did."
That's
so before we wrap up, I was going to ask you just really quickly because. And I don't know if it's a sensitive subject or not, but the fact that you were a guitarist, were there artists that you admired growing up? That
John McLaughlin.
Okay.
John McLaughlin.
And what was it about John McLaughlin?
Miles Davis once in a while, He played really fast. He played fast, and he so loved it, and there was just so much feeling behind him. And going to see them, you probably never saw them in person. It was just unbelievable. They would play the first chord of Inner Mounting Flame, and it felt like a wave was crashing into the theater. I never saw anything like it or since. It's just really, really cool.
Well, I never had an opportunity.
I mean, I like Jeff Beck. I like Eric Clapton. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask you if you're familiar with the artist Terry Reid.
No, I know the name, but I don't know what from. So I don't think I do.
Well, he turned down being in Led Zeppelin. He was good friends with Jimmy Page, and Jimmy had invited him to be the singer for Led Zeppelin, and he had his own career going on at the time, fairly popular, and he turned it down. Obviously, the rest is history, but he's a phenomenal guitarist and has jazz influences as well. So that's another story for another podcast, but for sure. But
thank you so much, sir.
Mr. Noonan, this was a pleasure. I hope this was a fairly enjoyable experience for you, and I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was cool.
Thank you.
And
thank you so much,
and
Mr. Noonan.
Look forward to having you. We look forward to hearing some positive stories coming out in the near future. I hope everything goes well for you.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Take care. Thank you for listening to Podcasting After Dark's exclusive interview series with Tom Noonan. And, as always, thank you for your support.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.